So you are going to watch a respected journalist, Terry Moran, lose control of an interview, without him even realizing it.
I mean, you're being dishonest. No, I'm not.
Not because he wasn't good, but because the person across from him mastered the art of deflection.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry. You did not have the letter MS13. It says MS13. That was Photoshop. That was Photoshop, Terry. You had it.
This video isn't about President Trump. It's about a masterclass in timing, tension, and what you tend to miss when you break the flow. So here he says, we'll get back to that, and he withdraws a little bit, closes his eyes, and accepts the following.
It won't be easy.
So even the most experienced interviewer may fall back into ego-driven reactions.
How do you know that? I'm asking you, sir. Well, you're not asking me. You made a statement. You're not. Now I'm asking you.
If you have ever felt the tension of wanting the truth but fearing you'd push too far, this episode is really for you. So, welcome to my new case study, inspired by a video of the David Pacman show, where he analyzes President Trump's behavior in an interview with Terry Moran. He had a strong take on the interview, and I would like to turn things around by observing Moran as interviewer. But before we start, I would like to talk about a few disclaimers. So this video will be about analyzing interviewing skills and not about nonverbals or behavior per se. As a forensic behavioral expert, I always need to take a neutral perspective and analyze the skills and give advice about improving communication and interviewing skills. So in this case study, it will not be about certain people or their behavior, nor about my opinion of people. My only goal is to teach you how to improve your skills. So maybe just begin. I would like to start the video at the beginning to give you a little bit context, and then I will run all my items one by one. And have fun watching.
Hello, everybody. How are you? This is the Oval Office. This is the Resolute desk, which is really something very spectacular. There's nothing quite like it. And they give you a choice of about 7 different desks, but this is the one I chose. Ronald Reagan had it. FDR had it. A few people had it, but I found it to be the most beautiful. It is amazing. This is an amazing space, and amazing, maybe architecturally wonderful, but amazing for what it represents.
This is a very good start. Moran does several things right at the beginning, meeting the interviewee on their turf and opening with familiar territory, in this case, the Oval Office. This will help to build rapport, and this is what I always say while I'm teaching investigative interviewers. It's best to interview people in their own environment. This creates a rapport, it creates a connection between you as an interviewer and your interviewee. So this might be a good idea, especially when you think that confrontation can go up in the interview as well. Why? Because you have to make a sort of agreement in the interaction when people feel comfortable, and when the confrontation goes up, this can also be redirected in agreements you made in the beginning.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this. Thank you very much. Here in the Oval Office, it's special. 100 days into your second term. So what's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done so far in these 100 days? Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant, because our country was really going bad. They were allowing people to come in from prisons, as you...
Okay, this is actually a strong opening question of Moran. What do you consider the most significant thing you've done in the first 100 days? This invites actually reflection from the interviewee's perspective and gives a lot of information that you can use later on as well.
We're fixing it, and I think that's going to be very, very important. But I have a lot of ground to cover. Yeah, I would really say that the border is so important. You know, just
And
can't
we'll get there.
let that
Immigration is
happen.
huge,
Yep.
and we're going to get there. But I want to start. So,
We are going to get there, and I want to start. And here Moran demonstrates a lot of confidence, a lot of control, and also his space on the topics he wants to converse on. So hopefully he is able to do this in the whole interview. So let's see.
with the economy, the number one issue for so many, Moody's and other analysts say it's going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried. Even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on.
So people didn't sign up for this. How do you answer those concerns? And President's response is they did sign up for it. Technically, this is actually true, right? So he made this promise several times. And also what I think is that Moran shows a lot of patience, just listening to see what kind of information he can still use later. But the confrontation will start. So what would this do with the patience Moran has showed recently?
One of the things you ran on was you said you'd bring prices down on day one, and that it would happen fast, and that it would happen fast.
I have.
Most economists tell you that tariffs will raise prices. So don't your tariffs cut against that promise you made to bring prices down?
No, because I had massive
So we are just 8 minutes into the interview and Moran already jumps in too quickly with a confrontation. There is a cut against promise. This might cause the risk that triggering defense mechanisms early on as well. So the only thing Trump can do is saying no, to hold on to his own narrative. So let's see if Moran is able to get more into the conversation first and build more rapport before he starts to confront.
Gasoline hit $1.98 in a few states during the last couple of days. It was $3.50 and $4 and $4.50. But gasoline is way down. When I took over, you remember the big thing with eggs. They hit me the first week, eggs, 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 like it was my fault. I said, I didn't cause this problem. This problem was caused by Biden. What's the problem with eggs? And they said, they've doubled it. Well, eggs are down 87% since I got in. They were saying you won't have enough eggs for Easter. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. Groceries are down.
Okay, can you see where Moran is trying to stop the president in the conversation, giving more details about the eggs? And this can indicate less confidence in having the control over the conversation. Okay, I'm going to slow down this piece a little bit, because when Moran is actually saying, okay, we'll get back to that, then something happens non-verbally as well. Maybe a slight withdrawal from Trump. So you might be able, as an interviewer, to take this a little bit more serious, to understand what the boundaries are in this conversation.
If that wants to be stubborn, they want to be cute.
We'll get to.
So here he says, we'll get back to that. And he withdraws a little bit, closes his eyes, and accept the following.
It won't be easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should expect? Some hard times?
I've said that during my campaign. We were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not
Hard times? Hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I think great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, gasoline is down, groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China.
Why is
Your
it?
treasury's.
So in this case, Moran's focus really narrows and pushing Trump into talking about broken promises. So when people focus too hard on pushing a point, the resistance actually increases. And there is a metaphor I like to use quite often when I teach people in investigative interviewing. And what I explain during training is that I ask people to hold their arm out, for instance, like this. And I tell them not to drop the arm. And I ask them to have a full focus on the hand and not dropping it. And what happens then is that you draw inward and you have a very narrow focus. And then I push down on the arm, and of course the arm tends to drop quite quickly. But when I ask participants to shift their attention away from the arm, ask them to focus on a more distant point or goal, for instance, it becomes actually harder to push the arm down. So this metaphor illustrates what happens when you are shifting your focus outward, further away, instead of inward, on a winning a moment, for instance. And what happens then is that it can reduce your own resistance in the conversation, but also the resistance of your interviewee. And this can increase your feeling of control. And for interviewing, this is not different at all.
They were making from us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us. Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that anymore.
I want you to think about the boom that this country's had in small businesses, mom and pop, Etsy stores, small businesses.
Really? They haven't had a boom because of inflation.
Well,
the boom was inflationary boom. The people were wiped out with inflation. I mean, you read the news, you do the business stuff, I assume.
So again, there are those non-verbals trying to make a point, and also the tone is quite different from the beginning of the interview. And confrontation escalates tone as well. So deflective interviewees are going to start resisting again when challenged with contradictory facts, for instance, especially in front of an audience. So it's better in this case to use more scenario-based Socrates questioning. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later.
Let's move on to immigration. And as you said, it is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods. And so I want to ask you about my methods, about your methods, how you're accomplishing.
They seem to work.
Okay, there are questions about your methods. And the interviewee replies, well, they seem to work. Also a classic deflection. And I'm wondering if Moran actually will challenge or steer back to where the topic started.
Do you acknowledge that under our law, every single person who gets deported gets a hearing first to make their case?
Well, are we talking about people that are citizens of our country or not?
No, you aren't deporting citizens at this point. Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say.
Right. All right, let's talk about the Venezuelans. You deported more than 200 Venezuelans to that prison in El Salvador. You say they're violent, they're gang members, they're terrorists. Many of them don't have a criminal record at all.
Well, I'm not so sure about that if you take a look.
I want to read you something.
Excuse me, when you look at those people.
So on Venezuelan migrants, the interviewee must actually say that some or all of them have criminal records. If he would not do it, his narrative or his ideology or maybe his identity might crumble. So you must be very careful when you are confronting with such hot topics, and it's better to explore gently, for instance. And I talked about Socrates' dialogue earlier as well. So an example of a questioning like that would be, what if they didn't have criminal records? What might that mean? What might that mean to your government? In this way, you are helping to see or to show the public that he can or cannot reflect over the situation, but then the confrontation does not come from you. And this will help the conversation going.
Joe Rogan said this. Joe Rogan, one of the leading podcasters, Trump supporter, about the deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said, was dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters.
I agree.
Is Joe Rogan right?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, we want to be careful, and we are careful. We're doing something that has to be done. We have a country that's very sick. You know, Venezuela crime is way down, way, way down. You know why? Because their criminals are now living happily in the United States of America, and we're getting them out. And I was elected to get them out, and we're getting them
Under
out.
the law. It
And
sounds
we're
like-
getting them out fast, and we're getting them out legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened?
Okay, super interesting. So this part of the conversation started with Joe Rogan's quote, "Be careful not to become the monsters we are while fighting them." And actually, President Trump agrees, but then deflects even to blaming liberal judges as well. So Moran attempts to bring him back, but Trump still resists because he has to follow his own narrative, like said before.
We have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview.
So here is the MS-13 tattoo example. And the interviewee here warns Moran about a big break of a lifetime, which is also a clear deflection, but also a threat. And also here David Peckman spoke about the fact that Trump might be lying, or is lying in this case, or is cognitively impaired. But this is actually a very strong conclusion, and as a forensic behavioral expert I would never say so. And maybe even it's also something to say for people who didn't do a lot of interviews as investigative interviewer, because we know that people who need to do self-preservation, for instance, tend to repeat their story. They don't lie to the public, they lie to themselves. So it's very important to understand these dynamics, because you don't want to catch someone in the lie, you want to understand the motives behind the self-preservation, the why behind the self-preservation, because this can give you a lot of information about other motives as well. So don't jump too much into conclusions when you don't know how the personality is built and how the identity is built. You need to get information about that first before you draw conclusions.
I want to turn, I was just in Rome, and to that moving photograph of you and President Zelensky sitting in St. Peter's Basilica talking peace. It went around the world.
So here Moran starts to talk about that moving photo with Zelensky, and it's a great narrative entry, and you have to follow up. So let's see what Trump does with this entry.
Take us into that moment.
Well, look, the Ukraine is a very...
Also a very good question. Take us into the moment, again trying to understand his narrative of the situation, which can bring you a lot of information about motives and intent as well.
Serious, very tough situation. And this is Biden's war. This is not my war, but I want to see if I can solve it, because probably close to 5,000 young soldiers a week are being killed, Russian and Ukrainian. We also spend a tremendous amount of money in Ukraine, and Europe should be spending much more than us. They're not. They're spending much less. It's been badly handled by the Biden administration. It's been badly handled all the way around,
That moment.
So that was super strong. Moran redirects with that moment. What about that moment? And it makes me wonder about how well the president has trained himself to tell the same story over and over and over again. You might even wonder if he trained himself this well because he isn't able to be flexible in a conversation, for instance. And as an interviewer, this might be very interesting, because if you are more more flexible in the conversation and do something that isn't expected by your interviewee, it might help you to gain more knowledge and more understanding about the narratives that the interviewee is still following.
Do you think Vladimir Putin wants peace?
I think he does, yes. I think he does. I think because
of raining missiles
I think he really, his dream was to take over the whole country. I think because of me, he's not going to do that.
Do you trust him? Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
So also a very classic deflection. Do you trust him? I don't trust you. Aimed directly to Moran as well. But Moran smiles and also stays grounded, and it's very skillful. Many professionals or early professionals, people who are just starting as an investigative interviewer, they actually freeze here, and Moran doesn't.
So tell me that a guy whose hand is covered with a tattoo doesn't have the tattoo, you know. I mean, you're being dishonest.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Do I trust? I don't trust.
So here Trump doubles down. Fake questions, you were being dishonest. And Moran actually says, no, I'm not. And this can be very dangerous, but because now he may fall into the trap of emotional hijack. In this case, it's better to let this pass. So what can you do if you are in the situation? Well, if you find yourself in emotional hijack, it might be very good for you to breathe in and out through your nose. Because if you do that, then the hormone serotonin kicks in again. And this will make you feel relaxed. This will help you to gain more helicopter view of the situation, of your conversation, so that it's much easier for you to let this situation pass. So this was a physical example of what you can do to gain back your control in the interaction. But also in the interaction itself, you can do a lot of things. And most of the time, it really helps to step out of the content of the confrontation, of the interaction, and name behavior very gently on the process level. An example might be to say, I see what you're doing here, and it doesn't work with me. You have the chance to share your vision with the public, so will you take it? And this way you are turning the conversation completely around. And since I think that the president isn't very flexible, this will help you to gain more traction in the conversation.
We found a lot of fraud. There was a lot of fraud. Fraudulent things were taking place. And we ended that, and those people are going to be suffering because of it.
A legal note, fraud is a crime. There have been no referrals to the Justice Department at any.
There have been no referrals to the Justice Department. Let's see what happens then.
You don't know that, do you? How do you know that?
Have there been referrals to the? Are there criminal
How would you
referrals?
know that there were no referrals? I think there were referrals.
Generally, all right. There's been no investigation from the
How do
Justice
you know
Department.
that?
I'm asking you, sir.
Well, you're not asking me. You made a statement. You're not.
Now I'm asking you.
That was a.
Okay, this is very dangerous situation to be in as an interviewer, because Trump pushes back. How do you know that? And in this case, Trump actually wins the exchange because Moran actually lacks the data. It's better to ask about the logic of the narrative that Trump is talking about so that you can gain more information and confront later.
Bring up what is truly to a lot of people, one of the biggest achievements of your first term. That is Operation Warp Speed. You got that COVID vaccine up and going and distributed. A lot of people took it, and a lot of people that feel their lives have been saved by it. Now we have this.
Okay, this is very useful conversation. This is how you can build rapport again, how to be able to connect again, to talk about what the president actually did very well. So let's see what happens and what Moran does in this case.
I want to talk a little bit about presidential power, the powers that you have in the presidency temporarily that the American people have given you, right? You've revoked a lot of people's security clearances. You've revoked people's security details who are still threatened, with death threats. You've gone after law firms because they've employed people you don't like, or they have represented people
Well,
you
they
don't
obviously agreed because they paid me a lot of money.
like. The reason they agreed is because you were threatening to destroy their business with your executive order that said you can't represent clients for the federal government. That's
These
their
are
bread and
big
butter.
boys. These are the biggest, most powerful lawyers. These are not.
You got a lot of leverage as
easily
president.
intimidated.
So here Trump says lawyers agreed because they were paid very well. And then Moran actually says, but you are powerful, they are just surviving. And this is a useful confrontation. And the way he does it with a little smile also helps for Trump to accept what is coming towards him in this confrontation.
Are you using your powers as president to get personal revenge?
No, I'll tell you what. You're really not asking, and you should be asking. There has never been a president in this country, in the history, that was persecuted like I was persecuted by really crooked people, dishonest, horrible people, and it's been proven. So when you say I'm treating people rough, I'm not treating people rough. I was treated worse than any president, and it.
Okay, so it was a very good question of Moran. Are you using your personal power? And he says no, but he continues the story and almost is explaining why he does what he does. So let's see what happens next.
History of our country. And, people figured, well, maybe that's it. Finally, we got, he's leaving town. There goes the helicopter. And then I came back. And I came back because I have tremendous support. When you win an election like I won it, and you will admit I won all 7 swing states. I won the popular vote. I won 2,750 districts compared to 500 districts. That's why the map is all red. And those people feel that I was treated unfairly.
But does that give you the right to go after your political opponents with the powers of this office?
I don't know.
Does that give you the right to go after your political opponent? A very good question.
Going after, all I'm doing, hey, Biden did something to me, and I did something to Biden. And you know why I did it? Because he's grossly incompetent. That's not a man.
Okay, let's talk about motive and intent. So the good question gave a lot of information about the motives, why he is doing what he is doing. Very interesting to see this happening right in front of the camera.
So those are really the questions you should be asking. What do you think of the autopen? Who wielded the autopen? Because whoever that person was, think of it, whoever the person that wielded the autopen, he was really the president of the United States, because I don't think that Biden knew anything about it.
Fair enough. But you are the president now, and I'm asking the justification for going after people you don't like.
Okay, super interesting and very skilled how Moran was actually able to use the information he got out of the president and let it redirect back to him and let him reflect on his behavior. So very well done.
But do you think, I'm going to ask it, if I may, do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up, and I think we're a respected country again. We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across a stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst. I have to be honest with you.
Thank you for the opinion, but more importantly, thank you.
Okay, also very skillful. Just not go into emotional hijack again. Thank you for your opinion. Very good.
More importantly, thank you for having us here. I have one more question. It's a big one. It's a question that a lot of people have out there. What do you say to people who are concerned you are seizing too much power and becoming an authoritarian president like we haven't had before?
No, I would hate them to think that. I'm doing one thing. I'm making America great again. We have a country that was failing. We have a country that was laughed at all over the world. We had a leader that was grossly incompetent. He should have never been there. The election was rigged. He should have never been there.
Okay, a very good question about power grab and also very brave to do so. But again, Trump avoids answering and sticks to his narratives. And then Moran ends the interview.
Our country suffered greatly, and now our country's coming back like nobody can believe. I have editorials just today where they're saying they've never seen anything like it. They love it. Our country's coming back, and we're respected again.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Terry, very much.
So from my perspective, Terry Moran shows an immense patience and professionalism. He absorbs attacks on his ego and keeps going. But like I explained in my video, Flooding the Zone, at certain moments survival instincts still take over. Even the most experienced interviewer may fall back into ego-driven reactions, for instance. So that's when deflectors win the moment. And we see this often when journalists are too narrowly focused on extracting certain answers. They become confrontational too early mostly, especially when their own knowledge or the network's agenda is at stake. Even skilled professionals like Moran need to stay open for alternative realities and conversational routes. And that's where Socrates dialogue becomes a powerful tool. And in our training, Bootcamp Investigative Interviewing, we help journalists to exactly do that, to gain access to new methods, for instance, that lead to deeper insights, even when they are faced with high-resistant interviewees. If you have ever felt the tension of wanting the truth but fearing you'd push the person away, this is your reminder. It's not about asking the perfect question, and it's more about knowing when not to ask the question. So you have just seen what happens or what can happen when you push too soon. And I am curious as well. Is there a moment in your work where you push too much or when you know that you actually should have paused? So drop your moment in the comments. And if you like these videos and want more, please let me know in the comments as well which case study topic should be our next discussion. And also don't forget to like the video and to subscribe so that you won't miss anything. So thank you for watching and I see you soon. Bye bye.